Howdy doody, my good friends. Welcome back to Mac Music Review. Before we hop into the review, just want to say there's going to be some stuff down in the description if you're interested in how the channel works. Today we are going to be looking at the album And If Our God Is For Us by Chris Tomlin. Chris Tomlin is a very, very, very successful Christian contemporary music artist. He's a singer-songwriter. And what really stands out about Chris Tomlin is that he's very much on the worship side of Christian contemporary music. A lot of Christian contemporary music, male solo artists, are on the pop side of things, where it'll have a Christian message, but it's not really worship focused. It's not really it's not mostly about worshiping God, and more about hitting the listener with inspiring messages and Christian themes in their lyrics, and just some uplifting, inspiring tunes. Chris Tomlin on this album, And If Our God Is For Us, is all about worship. He's all about praising God, and that's the whole theme of the album. And yeah. This album actually won a pretty big award. This album actually won, I'm pretty sure this album won the very first Grammy for Christian contemporary music album. When the award was created in like 2010 or 2011. It used to be like 3 different Christian album awards at the Grammys, and then they kind of erased those and just kind of made it into 2: Best Gospel Album, Best Christian Contemporary Music Album. I think this guy, Chris Tomlin, won the very first Christian Contemporary Music Album with this album, And If Our God Is For Us. This album actually had 3 hits. Our God, which is one of Chris Tomlin's most well-known, most popular songs. It also has I Will Follow and I Lift My Hands. All 3 of these songs have tons of radio play on Christian radio and are very big, popular songs. This album, despite only having 11 songs, this album is 50 minutes long. It is 50 minutes long because a lot of these are worship songs, and worship songs, as you know, are slow and long and drawn out. And that is several of the songs on this album. The last song, Awaken, is almost 7 minutes long. Other songs on this album are like 5 minutes long, some like 4 minutes, 40 seconds. I mean, like, most of these songs are pretty long. Both musically and lyrically, And If Our God Is For Us is a very simple, straightforward Christian contemporary music album, with the emphasis on the worship. Besides the emphasis on worship, this really is just a very typical record. You're not going to hear anything really crazy. Lyrically, there's nothing really surprising or original. Musically, there's not anything super surprising or original. Yeah. The music is fairly straightforward. It's kind of sometimes pretty upbeat. The song No Chains on Me has some really upbeat music, a little bit of electronic elements on that song. Other songs some of them are really big sounding, a lot of them are really slow, some of them are more acoustic. And it's all sounds that aren't uncommon, sounds that aren't unoriginal, and for Christian contemporary music. The lyrical content of this record is pretty straightforward. It's Christian songs with Christian messages. I think a great way to tell this is a Christian album is, I've done this before, looking at the song titles. So the first one is called Our God, which you can basically tell that's probably a Christian song. And then you have things like I Lift My Hands, very clear reference to worship. And then Majesty of Heaven, that's definitely a Christian sounding song title. Then you have things like The Name of Jesus. If Jesus is in the name of the song, then it's probably a Christian song. Most of the time, that means it's a Christian song. You have another song on here called Faithful. If I had a quarter for all the Christian songs that were called Faithful, I would have a lot of quarters. Man, that is a very generic song title. Another song on here, Jesus My Redeemer. There you go. That's another song. 2 of the 11 songs on this album have Jesus in the title, so it's a Christian album. And then the other songs on the album can be interpreted as Christian songs, but they could also be in other genres, but I just labeled the explicitly Christian sounding songs on this album. Worth noting, Chris Tomlin is not at all an impressive, I shouldn't say that. He's not at all an original or striking vocalist. His vocals are very mundane. They're very sing-along. His singing and I think that's that way on purpose. His singing isn't really remarkable or weird or original. It's just kind of like, you could have a guy at your church who sounds like Chris Tomlin. Like, he's not like super original or memorable singer, but that works along with the sing-along nature of these songs with the worship focus. The focus, what that does is that diverts the attention from Chris Tomlin to God and to the lyrics and to the focus of praising God and not focusing on himself and everyone noticing, wow, Chris Tomlin has a really original, interesting voice. That's not supposed to be the meaning of the album. This album is for praising God and worship. And, of course, for money as well, because Chris Tomlin made some money with this album. Musically, this album is not bad. It doesn't sound super duper original, but some of these songs do sound really good. I actually do like all of the hits on this album, especially Our God. The opening music on that song is pretty cool, and it just sounds pretty good. No Chains on Me, a more upbeat song. That one also sounds pretty good. And most of the songs on this album sound pretty good. That's what I have to say. This is a pretty good sounding record. It's not very original at all. The music is barely original, but it's barely bad. There's very little things on this album that really sound bad. As far as the lyrics go on this album, it is good. The lyrics on this album are actually good because a lot of Christian artists kind of get lost. Like the more poppy side of Christian contemporary music, it just kind of gets watered down in these just kind of generic, sort of uplifting, like sort of true messages that are just kind of just made to feel good but don't really have a lot of meat or anything substantive. And this album, the lyrics are about God. The lyrics are focused on God. And with that focus, you really do get, you really do, Chris Tomlin is really saying what matters. Even with that being said, even with the topics being very God-focused and very, very good focus of the album, the lyrics are not very original. They're not very creative. There are good things said on this album and, good messages. And there are, these are worship songs. And so the lyrics are not super original or interesting, but they serve a purpose. And I think they mostly serve the purpose pretty well. I do not have a problem with Chris Tomlin being a not very remarkable, not very original singer. Like I said, it serves the purpose of the album, of this being a worship album, this album being about God and not being about Chris Tomlin. With that, it's kind of humble. I don't know if that was intentional, actually. If he probably wasn't intentional, but this is an okay album. It's definitely not a bad album. It's got good Christ-centered, God-centered lyrics. It has, good music that sounds good. It's just, this album really, I could not call this album great because there's very little things that are great about it. The lyrics are not very original or interesting. The music is not very original or interesting, but it worked. The lyrics are good. The music is good. The singing is good. I would even say the singing is good. I'm going to give this album a 3.5 out of 5. What do you think of Chris Tomlin? What do you think of the Grammys? What do you think of this fly jacket? That's actually not very fly. I don't know why I said that. Thank you for watching, of course. You're the best, you're the best, you're the best. Copyright, copyright, copyright. I'm going to get kicked off of YouTube for mimicking another YouTuber. Thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day.